How's it going, everyone? This is Miles with Windows Central Gaming, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Jason Ronald, the Director of Program Management for Xbox, to chat about the magic of FPS Boost and some new techniques that could see your favorite games potentially running better than ever before on the Xbox Series X and S. So first off, Jason, thanks so much for taking some time to sit down and chat with me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm very excited to pick your brain about this amazing tech.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well, and I just really appreciate all the great work and the coverage that you and the team do.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, we're big tech nerds, and I've joked with my friends about FPS Boost and how fundamentally I get it, but also I don't. So I'm excited to sit down with you and get the nitty-gritty details on all of this. So players like myself have been seeing the benefits of FPS Boost on our Xbox Series consoles for several months now, and it's absolutely been a transformative way to experience some of my favorite Xbox One games. Now, on paper, like I mentioned, it sounds fairly straightforward, but can you break down exactly how FPS Boost works on backwards compatible titles?
It's a great question, and this is one of the things that I really enjoy is as a player, we just want you to have a great experience. But from an engineer's perspective, it's actually really complicated how FPS Boost works because console games are really hyper optimized to the hardware that they were originally designed for. And as you move the games forward to new generations of hardware, as an example, the calculations can be done in so much faster time than they've ever been able to be done before. And so when we really started getting games up and running on the Series X and the Series S, we identified that there were certain titles that we could actually get to run faster than they were ever originally designed to do. So what we did is at the lowest levels of the platform layer, in many ways, the title doesn't even know that it's running at a higher frame rate because what we're doing is we're actually completing the calculations much faster. And we're basically telling the title that, hey, we're ready to go with the next set of calculations or the next physics simulation or rendering the next frame. And that all happens deep in the operating system layer, very low level. And then the titles that work with FPS Boost, they're basically just running as fast as the system's allowing them to do so. And in many cases, that results in, say, a game going from 30 frames a second to 60 frames a second, or 60 frames a second to 120 frames a second. But there's other titles that when we try to use this technique, we'd also see things like animations running twice as fast, which is clearly not what was originally intended, or maybe a physics simulation or network gameplay wouldn't work as expected because we're kind of fundamentally changing the timing of the games themselves. So that's why, when we develop these techniques, we try to identify the broadest set of titles that we can apply them to, but then we really sit down and really test them to make sure that we're not actually breaking the game. We're not introducing a game-breaking bug or we're violating the original intent of the title. So it's a really exciting opportunity to try to get these games to run better than you've ever seen them before and just to provide that best-in-class experience.
Yeah, and that's amazing because, I talk to people online and for us, it's like, oh, cool, FPS Boost is added. It's doubling the frame rate. So we assume you just flip a switch and the game is functioning and you're good to go. But yeah, it's good to get those insights because I understand that it is a lot more complicated than simply uncapping the frame rate and saying, all right, let's go. Let's see what happens. So your team recently added FPS Boost to a highly requested title and one that I was personally very excited to see run at 60 FPS on Xbox, and that's the RPG masterpiece Dark Souls 3. So alongside this announcement, you mentioned that you had to develop a brand new technique unique to Dark Souls 3. Can you explain what this technique is, how it differs from previous FPS Boost titles, and whether or not this opens up new possibilities for future games?
Absolutely, and it's a great question. And, as we've shared with the community a lot, we really listen to the community, and we heard from you and many other people in the community how passionate you were about Dark Souls 3, and we really wanted to see what we could actually go do. And I think Dark Souls 3 is a great example of the original technique that we developed just didn't work with the game. But when we saw all the fan requests and all the feedback, we had some engineers really sit down with Dark Souls 3. And over the many years that we've been working on backwards compatibility, we've developed a whole suite of different tools that really let us understand how the game is actually running when it's running on the platform. and it allows us to give us some insight into what's actually happening within the game itself while it's running. And one of the things as we were looking at Dark Souls 3, we actually were able to identify certain, global variables and global timing settings that were really unique to Dark Souls 3. And as we started understanding kind of how the game was running and how the engine was developed and how the game was designed, I invented a way that we can actually change values in memory while the title is actually running. And so, we spent a fair amount of time really looking at it. In some cases, we'd speed the game up and then it would work great. In other areas, it wouldn't. So it just took a lot of really kind of understanding how the game was running. And with this new ability of actually changing values in memory, it was really about how do we optimize this experience? Because once again, our goal is always to do this with no work by the game developers. We feel like this is an opportunity that we can really deliver on. So by being able to change these values and the timing within the title itself, we're able to get the game running at 60 frames a second and have that buttery smooth experience that you want as a player. But we also made sure that the game continued to play as you always expect it, because obviously a game like Dark Souls 3, it's known for being very difficult and very precise. And, we want to make sure that we're delivering that best in class experience. So it was absolutely a tremendous amount of work and a great job by the team to deliver on this. And we were really excited to deliver it to the community. And even for me, as somebody who has historically not been great at Dark Souls, it's great to play it at 60 frames a second.
Yeah, I know myself and a ton of people from the community really appreciate all the work you put into that because, yeah, Dark Souls, we were joking about how that's probably the one game that would break FPS Boost if they tried to do FPS Boost on From Software's formula. All the physics in there are way, way more complicated. So it's amazing that you got it working, and it feels so good to play it on my Xbox. So as it stands, there are nearly 100 games that support FPS Boost on Xbox. When your team goes about enhancing new games, how do you prioritize which titles get the FPS Boost treatment?
It's a great question. I mean, we look at it in a couple different dimensions. First and foremost, the feedback from the community absolutely drives our prioritization. And we know what games the community would like to see either brought into the program or FPS boosted. And we really look at the techniques that we've developed. And in some cases, you can tell very early on, hey, the existing techniques won't work. The game doesn't work at all, or it's not hitting frame rates, or, like I was saying, animation breakdowns, physics breakdown and whatnot. Other games, they actually start off looking really, really good, but we want to go through the entire game. And as an example, there's been games that the game itself plays great at the higher frame rate, but we discovered with the changes, we actually identify a game-breaking bug 90% of the way through the game. And we're not going to be able to deliver that. And then for a very small set of games like Dark Souls 3, we do try to just figure out, is there any way that we can do this? And, I think the team really gets motivated by the challenge of, there is this black box, there's no code changes in the game itself. And the team really takes it as a challenge to say, can we come up with a way to go do this? In some cases we can find those techniques, in other cases we can't. But it's really about the feedback from the community, and that really sets our priorities. And we do everything that we can to enhance as many titles as possible.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. So previously, your team mentioned it was testing ways of bringing FPS Boost to legacy titles running on the Xbox 360 and original Xbox. Are you able to share any updates on the possibilities of FPS Boost on games from older generations?
It's definitely something that we're continuing to look at. When we talk about kind of the complexity of things like FPS Boost, if you layer on top of the fact that, it's a game that was designed for an older generation piece of hardware, running on an emulator, running on a new piece of hardware, if you just think about the complexity, it is definitely a challenge, but it is definitely something that we're continuing to look at. We don't have anything to share today, but hopefully we'll have more to share later this year.
No, I appreciate that because I know it's something you guys have been testing for a while, but as you mentioned, you got layers on layers of systems that have to work together and deliver an experience that actually functions on your current machine. Certain titles like Fallout 76 seemingly lose their Xbox One X enhancements when running with FPS Boost. Is there a chance that any of these games could be updated to support FPS Boost while maintaining the Xbox One X enhancements?
It's something that we continue to look at. One of the things that's really important for us is when we do enhance a title by adding something like FPS Boost, we want the most consistent gameplay experience possible. And that's the thing is in some cases, maybe, the majority of the game runs perfectly fine, but maybe there's one level that does some different things or whatnot. So for us, it's more about the consistency of the experience. But we have heard the feedback from the community. There might be some opportunities for us to re-enable enhancements on some of the games that have already been FPS boosted. But this is also why we put the control in the hands of the player. You can choose, do I want to run this as a FPS boosted? Is frame rate more important to you, or is resolution more important to you? So we really want to put the control in your hands as a player, because everybody has different priorities depending on what game and how they choose to play.
Awesome. And I know you touched on this a little bit previously, but what have been some of the biggest hurdles when it comes to adding FPS boost to a title?
I mean, honestly, the biggest challenge tends to be technology, and just kind of, like I said, where games are really hyper optimized to the original target platform that the game was shipped on. And once again, we treat these as black boxes. We don't have access to the source code. We don't go back to the developer asking them, hey, if you could just make this change, because developers are really focused on their new titles and the titles that they're developing for the future. So a lot of times it's really about trying to work within those constraints and come up with really unique techniques. And I think the initial push with FPS Boost, the first set of titles that we released was really showing the variety of games that we could enable this on, showing games going from 30 frames a second to 60, or some titles all the way up to 120 frames a second. So it was just really about making sure that we're providing the best in class experience while also always respecting that original intent of the creator.
Awesome. So outside of incredible features like FPS Boost and Auto HDR, are there any other backwards compatibility enhancements Xbox players can look forward to in the future? I know previously we've heard kind of rumblings of a resolution boost. Is that still on the table?
Yeah, I mean, we're constantly looking for any way that we can enhance the titles. I mean, I think Auto HDR is a great example of a feature that early in the development of the Series X and the Series S, it was an interesting idea, but we didn't know, could we really pull it off? And after a tremendous amount of hard work across the division, we were able to deliver it and really enable it across a wide set of titles. I think the biggest challenge for us is finding techniques that can apply to more than one title. When we do the things that are specific to one title here or there, it just takes a tremendous amount of effort. And our goal is to try to get as many titles optimized as possible. So we don't have anything to announce today, but like I said, the team loves the challenges. And one of the things that I really love is, kind of going and throwing down the gauntlet saying, hey, the community really wants this. Have we looked at this? Have we tried this different technique? And, one of the most exciting things for me is when the team will ping me on email and say, hey, we've got something cool really working here, and being able to see some of this stuff, because it is this iterative process. It's this really creative process, but it is all around this notion of game preservation and bringing those great games from the past and modernizing them for the future players.
Stuff like that is incredible to hear. Your team has done an excellent job of, listening to feedback and trying to shift the platform around that. And, in the console space, that's new. That's something that historically has not happened for us. So I have a gaming PC, but I consider myself a little bit of a console heathen. So being able to revisit some of these legacy games is amazing. So Jason, thanks so much for your time. It was amazing getting a chance to sit down and chat with you about the magic of FPS Boost and how it truly works. Like I talked about, the team at Xbox has been investing in backwards compatibility in a way we've genuinely never seen in the console space before, and it's been awesome to watch this suite of enhancements grow. So I'm excited about the future of Xbox backwards compatibility, and with rad people like yourself at the helm, I'm sure we'll see nothing but great things. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you in the next video.